Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. My name is Larry Sashin, and today we're going to be speaking about a topic that is near and dear to everyone that turns out a product. In this case, we're talking about food inflation, but it really could be, the cost of paper, the cost of metals, the cost of whatever you're making has been going up over the last 4 or 5 years, and it is starting to affect the way we do business. All right, before we start, I want to go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves. Flora, why don't you start?
My name is Flora. I live in Cleveland. I just opened up a Filipino restaurant like a month ago, and so far it's doing well. So I'm kind of like excited what we can bring into the community.
Congratulations on your new restaurant, and I'm sure
Thank
you
you.
have a wealth of knowledge to share with us. Brandon,
Thank you.
you're up.
Hey everybody, my name's Brandon Close. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I own Chipper Dog Barbecue Sauce. We started making and producing barbecue sauce about 3 years ago. Recently, we opened up our own bottling facility and opened up a restaurant sandwich shop around that called Hazel and Hank's Gourmet Market.
Thank you, Brandon. Shelby,
Hey everyone, I'm Shelby. I own Jackson's Restaurant. It's a 180-seat gastropub on Long Island. I've had it for 17 years, so we've seen a lot. And I sit on the board of directors of the New York State Restaurant Association as well.
thank you. Thank you all for coming. Back to food inflation. It's interesting. A staple of every pub or steakhouse was shell steak. Skirt steak. And skirt steak 5 years ago, I was able to go out to the supermarket and buy skirt steak for $5.99. Same supermarket right now is selling it for $30. I could just imagine what this and everything else that you buy what it's done to your menus, what it's done to the way you do business. But Shelby, why don't we start with you? Tell us, you were talking about an interesting concept that you brought to me to fight inflation, the way you were going to change your restaurant to match it.
Yeah, let's just dive in. I think over the years, I think we're used to pivoting now that we've gotten through COVID. And I had read an article before COVID about ancillary business opportunities, so additional revenue streams and how you can kind of bring that in, and how, as restaurants, you're kind of forced right now to find other ways of kind of compensating for the inevitabilities of inflation. It's not like it's going back. So I've really tried to rethink of our restaurant, which is a full service, it's a casual restaurant, family friendly, as more of a community center. So, you think of going to Panera and you think of going to Starbucks and sitting there for hours at a time, and you probably get 2 or 3 rounds of non-alcoholic beverages and some snacks. So I'm kind of trying to rethink how we welcome people into our space and let them feel more comfortable just spending more time there, and crafting a menu that's a little like heavier on the protein side, the snacky side, because those things add up. And they're often higher margin and less of a lift as far as staffing goes. So I've been trying it out. It's not happening overnight, obviously, because people have their notions about how a restaurant works. But we'll get there, I'm sure.
Jay, you just developed a new menu in your restaurant, Flora, and I was wondering how the food inflation, how the higher prices have changed the recipes that you make. What are you doing to fight inflation?
When I created the menu, I made sure that several ingredients can coordinate to different food items. So if I'm using carrots, for example, it's like I make sure that I'm utilizing carrots for like 2 or 3 different on the menu items. Um, Evidently, I use a lot of pork belly, which it's like 2 weeks ago, it was like 261 a pound, and now it's like 398 a pound. So there's just like a big inflation there. So I'm trying to like go out of my way and like go to different stores and do a research. And I work with US food a lot. And I'm just trying to finagle how we can combat that $2 difference of when we stay the same price and still give the same uh, good quality, since we're just open up a new restaurant, and it's kind of like hard to like cut out that quality that you've been giving the first time you open and right now. I mean, it's not easy, Larry, to be honest with you. I mean, like in a 50-50 chance, it's like, should I keep this in the menu or not? Because profit margin is like, you just like throwing out in the garbage right now. So I'm still in the working process. So my answer to your question is like, I probably like tweak the menu a little bit and try to use certain items into different uh, in the different recipe that we have.
Okay, thank you. Now, Brandon, you talk two different types of food service. You
Yeah.
talk in the sauce side and the food service side. So how are you dealing with inflation right now?
We shop around a lot. We use two different distributors. We shop at two different chef stores in town, Sam's, wherever we can get our product the most reasonable is where we, tend to get it from. On the, for bottles, really, or spices, that's been a big thing. We've yet to run our first batch of rub because we're trying to source the products for it. And we've seen garlic powder, anywhere from 285 a pound at $8 a pound. So you just got to be smart on where you buy stuff. Yeah.
And you have to also, I guess, do you have to project ahead so that you're not caught with
A little bit. Part of the beauty of opening our own facility now is we can bottle to order rather than having to buy 300 gallons at a time. That was a challenge in itself, but we can get into that way later. But yeah, shop around is our biggest thing. We use eco-friendly containers. We were in Charleston County, South Carolina, which banned all single-use plastics a few years back. So we use sugarcane fiber to-go boxes. Those are $75 a case compared to like 30 for styrofoam. We found a new distributor for those that we can get them for $50 a case now, $50 for 200 of them. But it's all that kind of stuff too that goes into your margins that people don't think about. When we're quick math, what is that, like 50 cents a container or something? So when somebody comes in and orders a to-go sandwich, they're not thinking of that or the 25-cent silverware packet or any of that stuff.
yeah, it's all got to be figured in, except
Yeah.
for the fact that you can't charge more
No.
because they don't care.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
also-
I mean,
We're also
That's
not
the
thinking
thing.
about the third-party delivery services that are taking any version of a profit that you ever had.
so we just got on third-party delivery, and I won't name the name of which one, but they took over 50% fees or in July. It was insane. So to combat that, we were on the most expensive package and we were also running some promotions, but yeah, they made more money than we did in July. So to combat that, we've raised our prices online. We've tried lowering the package. We tried taking away the promotions and the orders went away. So to keep the orders there, we've just raised our prices. I think it was like $3 on each sandwich. So
Ooh, okay, okay. Flora, you mentioned something before, and I don't know if it's important or not, but maybe you can tell me. You mentioned that you're working with US Foods as your
Yes,
distributor. And
yes.
how are they helping you get through this? What do they do when you say you're working with them? Are you just ordering through them, or are you actually
Um,
working on things with them?
Actually, I'm very, very lucky that my rep is really, really good and she's really, really nice. So she helped me. I shop around a lot because it's not just I use US food order. I go to the Asian market, of course, because there's some items that you can't buy anywhere. Like bitter melons, you can't buy that in US food. So I would shop around. Like there's three different Asian market that I would go to and I compare prices. But luckily that the person that I was working with, US food, is nice enough to like she will help me and she'll sit down with me and then look for prices. And if I tell her it's like, well, Restaurant Depot, for example, the quarter legs is like $23 for a whole pack, and she'll like, okay, well, I'll try to call my boss and if they can price match that, because of course, I mean, that's like going to US food is like $33 versus $25. It's like $8 difference or whatever it may be. So I'm just like, I think every penny counts for all of us right now because we're in a pinch. Like we're all talking about, yeah, we want to give a good quality, but at the same time, we would like to have a little bit of profit, right?
You know, it's funny when we 2 years ago, when we mentioned something about inflation in food, we had the president of a very high-end luxury restaurant brand in Manhattan on the call. And when we asked him, "What do you do when prices go up?" he said, "We just raise the price." Uh, that's not quite the way it is right now. Shelby, how does the New York Restaurant Association look at this, and how are they helping the average restaurateur through this time of difficulty?
As far as food inflation goes, unfortunately, these days there's so much other bureaucratic loveliness going on that I think that the food purchasing is like so low on the totem pole. But there are expenses that continue to increase that are ancillary expenses for restaurants, that the association has amazing, rates and access to benefits for employees. That employee retention has really been like the main area of focus since COVID. So there are cost-effective ways of, giving benefits to employees that have been really successful programs. So, I think that you can raise prices when you have service that's indicative of those prices. Like if you're going and you're having a bad experience at a restaurant and the service is bad, then you're going to notice when the burger goes up by $1.50. But if you're having a good experience and you have staff that wants to be there and is providing that value, then you can justify that. So, I think the association does a really great job with that. I also think that there are a lot of these types of environments with the association. There are weekly operator calls in various parts of the state, and we kind of just go through. We will talk about US Foods, we'll talk about Cisco, we'll talk about local distributors, talk about Restaurant Depot, and how I think that crowdsourcing this is a really, it works, because you said during the pre-call, these little tips that you're getting, like not everybody knows everything about everything. We're expected as operators to have the full spectrum of running a business, and the restaurant business is a complicated business. So, every little bit that you can kind of get information from people and share information and be part of that community, I think that that's infinitely helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yvonne, unmute yourself, please. You didn't think you'd get here without getting on the show, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, Yvonne, tell the people what you do, and then I have a question for you.
Sure. So good morning, everyone. My name is Ivan Limon. My wife and I own a wedding venue in Forest Hills to be turned into a restaurant spring 2024.
Okay. So, Yvonne, when you're doing a wedding event or an engagement party or even a shower, you've said in the past that you sell dreams. You're
Right.
making dreams and hopes come true for people. Their dreams probably was thought of when they were 12.
Right.
Okay. And now there's some kind of inflation here that has made their lobster dinner too expensive. How do you guide people through this process that you can still turn out a high-end event, yet the price has to stay at a certain price point?
Well, I mean, for us, I guess we have the benefit of being able to kind of work this out ahead of time. You know, it's not like somebody's walking through the door and we don't know if they're walking through the door or not, or how, like I know ahead of time, there's 100 people coming through. This is their budget. This is what they're looking to have. I think it's a little deflating sometimes to kind of tell people when they have this, you know, Disney wedding idea. When you match it with the budget that they have, you have to kind of say, you know what, you want a lobster dinner, but you can't really afford a lobster dinner. So what are our options? And then the option becomes, instead of having, you know, a whole lobster, I'd be like, well, maybe we can offer you some kind of lobster pasta that for us is a little bit more cost effective because we can put like little pieces of lobster, build a lobster sauce it's still impressive and delicious. But at the same time, the cost side of it is a little bit more approachable because it's pasta, it's inexpensive. So it's for us it's a lot of that. It's a lot of how do you deliver a fantastic experience? And you mentioned before about the pork belly. Like we don't really offer. We started offering pork belly, and then we reined it in, and we said, okay, we're just gonna do like pork butt or pork shoulder. And if you present it in a nice way, and you give it a beautiful name, it's just as impressive most times. And I think you have to be a little opportunistic, I think, about the things that you can find and creative about how to implement those things into your menu.
Okay, so we brought something else into play here that we haven't mentioned before: creativity. Creativity. How do you package the same old thing a different way so people may think it's new and exotic? Um, how would you do something like that in your restaurant, Shelby? I see you smiling.
Yeah, I'm thinking about kale. I'm thinking about how like kale used to line salad bars and like it was the cheapest thing you can buy and then like suddenly became trendy and expensive. And like there was a baby version of it and it was even more expensive. So I think that like the same way things become trendy, things go out of style. And if you revisit things that were in style, like right now the 90s have like really come full circle, and I grew up in the restaurant industry, and I've actually been like, my dad will probably be really thrilled to hear this, but the items that my dad had on his menu when I was a kid, I've been like, oh, those are kind of ingredients that maybe I can bring back into play, like hearts of palm, like I don't know, things that come in cans that I can gussy up a little bit. So I think that like if you visit the different like eras of food popularity, you can probably find things that are less expensive on the shelf and less expensive, you know, with your distributor that maybe are like going to be kale. So, you know, things have highs and lows, and you kind of have to you can't just look for trends, you have to set trends too.
Okay. And so if you're setting trends, how do you market them so that the trend, you know, blares out to people that this is something they should try?
I mean, honestly, like as far as reaching people, and this is not something that I'm necessarily an expert in doing, but making it photographable and Instagrammable, people just really like an Instagrammable item. So, you know, there's a diner in Connecticut that's like a plain old diner, and they do insane, like they always have this item that's a little bit extraordinary, like a kitchen sink kind of item. And so giving people an opportunity to take a picture or talk about it. There's a bagel place in my town that's doing Dorito bagels. Like couldn't be a simpler concepts, right? They're literally just putting powdered nacho cheese on the outside of their bagels. And like they were on national television this week.
It's on page 3 of the New York Post the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like that place has been a million different bagel places. It was nothing. It was always getting kind of like, you know, put down, but like now everybody knows that this is like the place to go. So
Get a Dorito bagel.
yeah.
Okay, my grandmother is rolling over in a grave.
Yeah.
Brandon, now you're in the sauce business. You're in the barbecue sauce business. When I was a kid, you'd look and there were three kinds. And there you go. You go in there and now there's a 40-foot aisle of barbecue sauces. How do you get yours, which is now stretched to the limit in price. How do you compete with these people who have upteen millions of dollars to promote? How do you get recognition? And what are you doing to put your product out there?
Well, to start, we're not trying to compete with Sweet Baby Ray's or Kraft or any of those. I mean, it's just we're not there yet. You know, they're producing how many millions of bottles, probably a year or month or whatever it is. You know, I can't afford to do two for $3 or whatever they sell it at Publix for. You know, but we're a small batch. We for a Kraft barbecue sauce, we're fairly reasonable. You know, I look at some of our competitors and we're significantly under a lot of them. Um, I when we first started out, I had a price in my head that I said people aren't going to buy barbecue sauce over $5 a bottle. You know, now we're probably up to $5.50 or $6 a bottle on that, thanks to inflation. But we've always strived to keep it under that. And it makes it tough when you go to wholesale a product. It's our distributor who handles the major grocery stores for us. It's a pretty set in stone equation. Your price is X, we're going to raise it by Y, and it's going to be Z in the store, and it is what it is. So when we came in and said, you know, we want it priced at 550, the that bottom dollar price was pretty much all right. Here's what you have to sell it to us at. So then you have to make your margins work around that, or you have to concede and raise your prices. One of the two. Thankfully, we haven't had to do that quite yet. But I think we're getting close to not having to do it, but just do it to essentially stay competitive. You know, there's perceived value is a big thing, and it's great to be on the lower end of cost, but it doesn't always help you, which is kind of funny. You know, you see that with the major designer handbags. There's nothing different than a Gucci bag and I won't say a Walmart bag, but you know, a non-designer bag. The only difference is the name on the front of it, and people will pay 5 times more just for that name. So, with that being said, we do use quality ingredients. We quality test everything. We make small batches. You know, um, we don't we don't skimp on anything we do. You know, we buy high quality ingredients, and we don't put any fillers or I'm sorry, we use all natural ingredients. We don't put any preservatives or anything in it. So it really is challenging, you know.
Thank you.
We
Thank you.
use real sugar. We don't use corn syrup. So like there's places where we could cut costs, but we just haven't. We're not going to do that on some of those things.
Yeah, I got it. Got it. You know, you mentioned something on cutting corners and changing ingredients. And you know, there was a bakery that I used to go to every time I was near Paramus, New Jersey, and they made this incredible crumb cake. And I mean, this is for years and years and years I did this. And 2 years ago, I stopped by and I was with two people and I touted this crumb cake. And when we got it home, I tasted it and I said, this was good, but it was different.
Yeah.
Sterling, unmute yourself, please. Why was it different? Because the person who did the milling of their flour had raised prices so high, and they couldn't raise the price of the cake, that they switched flours. Now, Sterling, you're
Yeah.
doing baking in your new place.
Yes.
First of all, tell everybody who you are, and then let's answer this question.
I'll try. My name is Sterling Smith. I have a small bake shop now that I am running, and I'm making all fresh and artisan products locally here in the Hudson Valley in Lower Westchester.
Yeah, so let's get back to this. So here's a cake that was a mainstay. They made it in sheets, and the sheet lasted about 5 minutes. And before they had to bring out another one, and they cranked this out, and everybody knew this place for their crumb cake.
Yeah.
And now it's different. So how do you deal with something you've developed a flavor profile, you've developed everything so that
Sure.
your cookie is perfect.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you got to go someplace else for the flour.
That's really challenging because I had the kind of same issue. I was buying flour and I was using King Arthur flour. And to me, it's one of the better flours out there for making cookies. And I thought, all right, I'm going to try to get a better price on it. So I went and sourced other options and I got another flour, and exactly that happened, right? The flour just, it tasted like chalky almost, and it didn't taste like the King Arthur flour. So I really struggled with that. But again, I had to source 10 other flours to finally get something that was comparable to it. But it took a lot of time and effort and trial and error to get it back to being that level of flour that I was using. So it's a lot of it trying over and over, but also sourcing different flours to get it close to what I originally had.
So what I hear is you don't wait till it's too expensive. You should have, I know Flora says she works with different distributors
Sure.
and they're buying things from different people. And so you really shouldn't wait till you have to change. You should have something that steps in there. Now, Flora, you probably have the same problem when you do this because, you know, Yvonne mentioned that the price of pork belly went up so high, he switched to another type of pork. Now, if you're putting out a traditional dish that everybody expects pork belly in, how do you deal with that problem? Do you have 6 different pork belly distributors, or what do you do?
No, actually, it's funny when he mentioned about the pork butt. I did an experiment yesterday. I said, okay, why don't I put pork belly and put hot pork butt? And I tried it yesterday, and I want to see if there's any difference, if people will notice any difference, and there was none. So it was just like you just have to be a little bit more creative with your menu and you test it. And it was like it put me a smile on my face when he said that because I just did it yesterday. Like it's like, you know, those are the things that you just wanna be creative and think like, okay, how can I be cost effective to still give the same uh, flavor profile to the public that no one can notice it, you know, like what Shelby said, it's about the presentation and things like that.
Okay. Brandon, you were talking about your sandwich shop.
Yep.
Sandwiches, sandwiches have become what we thought a steak dinner was a few years ago. I mean, you go to a kosher style deli and a corned beef sandwich is running $20 to $22. Okay. I'm not sure your type of clientele is exactly the same that will, you know, come in there, you know, come in, they have an hour for lunch, they run in and buy a $22 sandwich from you.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
It's been challenging. And like, you know, we just opened the sandwich shop in May. So really trying to dial our menu in and find our clientele. We're still in that development stage, if you will. You know, we're doing a Chicago Italian beef in South Carolina. We're doing a Philly cheesesteak, which is big. But, you know, we're at $12, $14 for those sandwiches, and it's tough. Some of our competitors that are using frozen steak and all the frozen products, they're at $8 or $9 a sandwich, you know? It's really tough to compete with that. You have to almost have people taste the difference.
So there you just mentioned something. There you just mentioned something, and he's not here today, or I bring him in. Peter Herrero, who comes on our show often, runs a mini restaurant empire in Westchester. And one of his big things is when people come and they want to buy an Italian hero at your place. He says, this is great, but you know, he has a couple things made that he throws out on tables because he wants people to taste something new. So how do you introduce new products with this economy where you're fighting inflation, and how do you make your $12 Philly cheesesteak? Why do people have to taste it, and how do you get them to taste it the first time? Not by laying out another $4.
Yeah. It's a challenge. It really is. Like I said, that $8 or $9, I don't really know what it is. They're literally like right next door. We almost share a parking lot. We're a little different clientele. I think it's all about in your branding. But we've struggled with that. We opened up in a part of town that didn't have a lot of restaurants up until recently. And we weren't quite sure what our clientele was going to be. And we've found that people have traveled from all over the city. We've done some advertising on radio and TV, and people have come from all over the city to try our stuff. So we're not where we thought we were going to be catering directly to the neighborhood we were in. We're actually still catering to the city of Charleston, which downtown prices or, some of the other suburbs prices are pretty in line with what we are, just not where our neighborhood is yet. So I guess we're kind of fighting that gentrification word, or phrase. But there's new apartments opening up all around us that, are going to be high dollar apartments. We're a little early on where we're opening, but a year from now, that clientele is going to be here.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
have
that's
a
really
question.
interesting that you said
Go
that,
ahead.
Brandon, because there's a large contingency of New Yorkers that head down to the Carolinas.
Yeah.
And with construction of those new apartments and higher dollar rents and leases and whatnot, people like you're giving your price points for your sandwiches. And I was like, wait, that's crazy how inexpensive it is. Like you probably also give them fries, which is
No, we don't. So,
oh, good. Okay, that makes me feel better.
that's just the sandwich, and it's $3 to have fries, and it's $2 or $3 for a bottle of Coke. So, a value meal, if you will, you're pushing $20 on that. So
Yeah, that's that's reasonable in New
yeah,
York. And so
and it is
when
here
you have
too.
New Yorkers coming in, you are going to have a clientele that's expecting that kind of increase in prices. Yes, people say that they're going to the Carolinas to save money, but life is expensive no matter where you go.
Well, and that's another part of inflation. I don't know if you were going to get into today, Larry, but like just wages are insane. Food and beverage wages. Charleston, unless you live on the East Coast, I don't think you know this, is a pretty food centric town. So we're competing with restaurants downtown that have top chefs running the place, like the Top Chef TV show, or they've been on Chopped, or celebrity chefs, if you will, that have James Beard awards and that kind of stuff. And people are trying to get into those restaurants to work, and we're trying to compete with hiring against that. We've done that with our, what I'll say, it's not really a benefits package, but we have daytime hours. We're closed on the weekends right now. We close on holidays. That's our way. We have free parking. That's a big thing downtown. Obviously, you're paying to park. I'm sure you know that with New York restaurants. So,
Yeah.
but wages, I mean, it's like $20 an hour for an inexperienced cook right now. So somebody you have to train.
I'm even starting to see benefits like pet insurance being offered.
Yeah.
That's how creative it's getting.
Yeah. What used to be in the corporate world, those kind of benefits are now creeping into food and beverage.
Yep.
And that all adds prices to the $12 sandwich. I mean, it all bolsters that. So,
Larry, I have a question for
go
the
ahead,
panel.
Fred.
So one of the things that has stuck with me, a couple of years ago, we had a lady who was a rep for an equipment and supply dealer. And her suggestion to her clients was to go to a less expensive cut of beef with a more expensive knife to cut that less expensive cut of beef. And that was her suggested approach for how to control food costs. I'd love to get your reaction to that type of thought process.
Hey, Larry, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Charles.
I'm laughing at what Fred just said. That's a great story because for those of you that don't know me on the call, I'm a food and beverage consultant with a long background in both private clubs, but more importantly for this conversation, many years ago, unbeknownst to anybody, I was a Hilton corporate purchasing agent. So I'm just kind of laughing at that comment because the only person that benefited was that woman, of course, because you're buying the knives from her. It had nothing to do with the quality of the product for the guests. So at the end of the day, I would disagree not so politely with her.
Right.
But that being said, I think there's three things that have come up in this conversation that have caught my eye. One is the concept of signature dishes. And from a food and beverage consulting perspective, you literally can't muck with signature dishes. Larry, you said it. And you used the example of the crumb cake and the bakery. The gentleman that was talking about using King Arthur flour, people have come to expect a certain quality product. And people come back to your restaurants or your bakeries because of those signature issues. And so the question you asked a few minutes ago, Larry, about using different cuts and doing things, that has to be part of your DNA. In other words, your menu it doesn't matter what you're talking about. There are certain items that can't change. The barbecue sauce is not going to change, as Brandon said. That's what he's known for. But yet, can you use a different cut of meat when you're experimenting with a barbecue product? Of course you can, because again, it's something new and different and novel. But if you're known for certain things, if you move away from them, that is one of the reasons that people like me stay really busy. Because I walk into your business and I say, how come you're offering 23 products when you really can't afford 3 or 4 of them? That's a fact of life. You can run them occasionally as specials. One of the things we see is signature dishes only being offered on certain days of the week when volume is up, when you can do it. It's something to be very careful of. The second point I want to talk about real quickly is purchasing, because it was obviously an integral part of the conversation at the beginning. One of the things that a lot of people have done, and it works very well, is either A, joining a purchasing group, i.e. Avendra, and I'm not saying that Avendra is the cat's meow, but that's one as an example, where you're actually, as an independent or a one-off or a small restaurant group, you're now part of a national group, and you're getting the benefits of those pricing. The second point is looking at going to some of your vendors and doing a cost plus basis, where you literally sign an annual contract that says we will pay dairy at cost plus, and again, this is not the real number, cost plus 10%. Okay, and you then have the right to audit. You have the right to then go back and look at what they're paying for dairy, because they're only allowed to pay cost plus 10%. So a cost plus contract is something to talk to purchasing people about. You can get discounts on volume purchasing. You can get discounts on day of the week purchasing, because if you agree to do your purchasing and your deliveries on days that benefit those vendors, it works to your advantage. And then finally, quick pay discounts, where you may not have the money all the time, of course not, but if you pay your bill within 3 days, you pay your bill within 5 days, there's actually a discount involved. So there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, but I think you have to think outside the box. The idea of having contracts with vendors also, at the end of the day, saves you a tremendous amount of time of running around and doing cost comparison on a regular basis. If you're doing daily price, if you're a small business and you're doing daily price comparisons, it probably makes no sense. You probably should be doing it weekly or even monthly. I'm not suggesting that you give up that total benefit, but the reality is, in small businesses, daily price comparisons take up way too much of your time. So I'm sorry for taking so much time.
No, good stuff.
That's a really good point, and I feel like we haven't mentioned the fact that time is money, and so there's a lot that goes into that, and all this costing out and all this trying to finagle how to save $1, you're probably spending $3.
Okay. All right. So let's get back to, thank you, Charles. That was enlightening. Let's get back to something else. So now we're talking the signature products. We're talking some new ways of making it. Flora, you're using pork butt instead of pork belly. You're testing that. But what happens when you introduce something new? I keep coming back to that because, like I said earlier, things change when you add new products to your menu. Restaurants that had different types of protein dishes on their menu now have 4 pasta dishes. How do you get people who are used to buying one thing in your restaurant to buy something new? How do you get them to do that?
I think that's where staff comes in. I mean, that's where, you're training people to sell, you're training your staff, you're training your bartender, you're training your hostesses on new menu items to let people know that they even exist. Because when you have a regular customer, they're very often defaulting to what they're used to, because that's why they're a regular customer, because they have what's comfortable for them. And so having people that are there to be friendly and introduce them to, a new item that the chef is excited about, whether or not the chef is really excited about it doesn't matter. It's just what the customer is told.
Okay. How do
Can I
you do
jump in?
that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, along that line, I also offer sampling of products. And that's really key, because that helps you sell it. If you can sample something and give it to them to try, then they're more inclined to try something new or different. Also, I look for the trend. Vegan is huge right now, and gluten-free is huge. So now I'm expanding those categories, and that's an automatic sell in itself, just by offering those kind of things. That is the buzzword. You mentioned kale before. That was huge buzzword. And offering those items out there, making it, as a signature dish or something, really creates a lot of buzz and generates people to come back and try it.
Okay. So how would you do that in your place, Brendan?
It's funny. We've kind of bucked the trend and gone more basic, if you will. We're just doing everything we do the right way, and trying not to charge an arm and a leg for it. It sounds like, Shelby said earlier, prices are reasonable. I hope our customers agree. But we do it. What makes us special is that we not trying to be special, I think. We're just using fresh products, quality products, and doing, like I said, everything the right way. When you come in and get a Philly cheesesteak, it's a Philly cheesesteak. It's not, we're not trying to gussy it up or make it into something it's not. And I've seen that a lot in the culinary industry, that people will misbrand a dish, maybe is what I'm trying to say. And that's, you go in and you get a linguine and it's not linguine or something, something as simple as that. But
I think you're like, you should value, like, it's great that you do that, because I think something that is super valued to people, but we don't acknowledge it very often, is consistency. And like, that's really what's important. So if the person is coming in and getting what they pay for, so to speak, then, and that's going to create a loyalist. It's also, in a city like yours, if you have a Philly cheesesteak and Eater Charleston is rounding up cheesesteaks, then you're going to get press on that, because you have a consistent product that's just done well.
I mean, I've seen it a lot, I guess. And this is just a stupid example, but somebody doing like a Wagyu Philly cheesesteak. Like, could we do that? Of course. That $14 cheesesteak would probably go to 22, and would it be that much better? Probably not, So like I said, we're using quality cuts, we're not skimping on anything, but we're just doing things the right way.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I chuckle every time I see a Wagyu hamburger.
Yeah.
Hamburger. The Wagyu is great as a steak, but any meat that you chop up and you add some flavorful stuff like fat into it, it's, you can't tell the difference.
No.
But I'm hearing something in you that you do things consistently. So when you have a product list, in your case, your menu, how are you keeping track of what should stay on and what should be either tweaked or removed?
So we started, our menu's going through, I think, two different changes at this point. When we first started, we were using an 8-ounce custom blend burger. Everybody's going to a smash burger now. So we decided to go back to a big, thick patty, and it just didn't sell. So we listened to our customers. We changed that now to a smash burger. It allows us to, buy smaller quantities, first of all. So we're keeping it fresh. We're not running through beef. We're not having to throw out beef at the end of the week because we ordered too much, because that was the smallest quantity of that custom blend we could get. We had an Italian pork sandwich on the menu. It was a 3-day process. We had broccoli rabe on it. It was the only place on the whole menu we were using broccoli rabe, and we could only buy it by the case. So we were having to saute it and freeze it. And it just, so we got rid of that too. Now we're coming back and running that as a special occasionally, where we can just go to the store and buy 3 bunches of broccoli rabe. So we've done things like that. We had wings on the menu, and people loved them. They were received well, but we could never dial it in right to where we'd either have too many cooked or not enough cooked, or we weren't cooking them in order. We were cooking them and then flash frying them back to crispy. But yeah, so
Got it.
we've tweaked the menu, and we've listened to what our people are saying and what sells well, and
Yeah, I got it. Got it.
Larry,
Great.
Larry, back to your question. One thing you have to keep in consideration is the concept of menu engineering. You have to look at the items on your menu and don't look at them from a revenue standpoint, but look at them from a contribution margin standpoint. So, for example, and these are fictitious numbers, you buy a steak for $15, you sell it for $30. And everything else on the plate costs you another $5. You spent $20, the contribution margin is 10. You look at those based on volume. So if you make $10 on every steak and you sell 100 steaks, it might be worth staying on the menu. You sell 3 steaks, then you start looking at the inventory that you've got and the issues of people unfortunately wanting to remove steaks from your property. There's a whole issue there. And so you really have to menu engineer your menu on a regular basis. Are you using, as was just said 2 seconds ago, are you using broccoli rabe in one dish? You're buying a case of broccoli rabe, you're using a bunch of broccoli rabe a day. At the end of the week, you're throwing away a half a case of broccoli rabe. It obviously goes to the point that the broccoli rabe needs to come off the menu, or there needs to be an alternative way to buy broccoli rabe. And I think one of the mistakes that people make all the time is they don't look at those menu items. They don't look at what goes in the garbage at the end of the week, or what those substitutions can be. Can you replace broccoli rabe with broccoli because you're using it in 5 other things, and do some spices that would build up the sandwich something differently? And again, I'm not picking on your broccoli rabe.
No,
don't think, Brandon knows what I'm saying, but
yeah, absolutely.
You have to look at those items and say, are they worth bringing in? Are you bringing in an entire strip steak and cutting steaks, but yet the 2 end cuts don't necessarily work for you? Maybe you spend a little more money and you buy steaks individually pre-cut to your specifications and cryovac, because then you can control them, and you can buy 3 steaks at a time instead of buying an entire strip. So there's a lot. It goes back to the whole purchasing thing.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
thank you.
auditing your waste and optimizing how you utilize your waste. Like, you can be less wasteful. You can utilize end cuts in different ways. Like if you're making a beef stock for your French onion soup, then like you have ingredients there. So, I think that it's probably like a very important thing to do as soon as possible is to pay attention to what you're throwing in the garbage or what is not being utilized, and how you can shift that a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you. We're at that point where I say this every single show. Time is our enemy, and we're approaching the end. And, if you get 3 takeaways from here, you got to look at what you're doing. You got to listen to the market and pay attention to trends. And you have to be smart. Don't stick with what you want to do. See what really works for you. And it's hard to say goodbye to old friends like a broccoli rabe sandwich, but because you love them and they are delicious. But if you're selling them, if you're not selling them, they're no good. So what we're going to do before we say goodbye is I'd like to go around the room and have everybody leave 1 point to our listeners. And Flora, why don't you start? Just if there's one message that you want to leave with people, what is it?
Everybody did great, bringing something to the table. One thing is like I got something from Brandon, I got something from Shelby, I got a lot from Charles. You know what I mean? And so as Ivan, thank you so much. And if I have anything to take from everybody, which I'm just I'm brand new to the business. Although I've been in the business for 25 plus years, but this is the first time I open up my own restaurant. I guess just keep an eye on everything. Just like I said, price match with different vendors and kind of like I don't want to. Yeah, we all want to make some kind of profit, but I don't want to suffer quality. So I'm trying to tweak every items that I have in the menu wherever I can. So thank you for a lot of suggestions that you guys had for this morning.
Okay, thank you, Flora. Brandon.
I think everything will eventually even out, wages and food prices and then menu prices, they'll all get back to where it's stable, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I think we're in this volatile cycle right now where everything was raising so fast that I know for me, I didn't want to keep raising my prices with everybody else. I think we're getting to that point where it's finally starting to settle out. Now we can see where things are going to go, and we can adjust our pricing to what it, to hopefully what will be a final price increase for a while at least.
Okay. Shelby.
I guess I'd say don't be afraid to shop at the supermarket if you're not using quantity that, doesn't like if you can shop the supermarket and shop sales, you might get better food costs. And I had a really good one, but it escaped me. I don't know, use a smaller plate.
Use smaller plates. Yeah, you'll remember exactly what you want to say after we hang up. Joyce, unmute yourself, please. You've been Good morning, Joyce. You've been very quiet today, but I know you're absorbing. What is the point or 2 points that you've heard that people should consider in their restaurants?
The environment is changing very quickly, and adapting from a owner's perspective is challenging, but there are options. I think what Charles did in summarizing ways to make it easier and thought processes that are different, like someone else said, out of the box, the way you've normally been doing business, a lot of that will continue, but you now have to think out of the box. Also, I was thinking, you have to also address your clientele. Ask them what, there's surveys that are being done by every business. Every time I buy something, I get an email. How'd you like the service? How'd you like the product? Your customers are coming into your businesses because they like your food, they like the environment, they want to support you as a local business. Invite them to participate. And that's really what's happening in not just our industry, but the democratic process of everyone's involved. And I think if we turn it around a little bit, especially the millennials and the Gen Z, they really want to be involved with what they're eating, how they're supporting business and driving the future.
That's a novel approach. Listen to your clientele, but it's very, very valuable. So Fred, any last takeaways?
I think you need to balance the pace of your everyday business, which is really difficult sometimes to take yourself out of that flow. And at the same time, you need to, when your vendor comes in, instead of just executing an order, I think it's time to say, hey, hold on a second. What else can we be doing, or what else are you seeing with your client base that we could be doing more efficiently?
Okay.
I think it's back to basics.
Back to basics. Yes, yes. You know, look, think, and listen. You know, those are the three takeaways that I have. We've heard a lot of great information today, and I hope you all come back 2 weeks from now when the virtual breakfast session switches to a coffee with Alon Shaya. Now, if you don't know Alon Shaya, I suggest you all go to Google and type in Alon, A-L-O-N, Shaya, S-H-A-Y-A, and then put CBS Morning. He was interviewed on CBS Morning, and he's a quite interesting guy, and he'll be back. He'll be with us in 2 weeks. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for spending time with us. Panel, thank you, especially you Midwest people who had to get up a little bit early to be on with us. And just two things I have left to say. Everyone, stay positive, test negative, and I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.